Hello and welcome to the live series podcast where I bring to you some of the best technology leaders across Europe who are prepared to give up their time to share their expertise, stories and ideas in a way to bring the tech community together and inspire the next generation of tech professionals. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Dipti Dhawan, who is the VP of Engineering at an organisation called Omni. Now, Omni are a Berlin-based AI as a service provider for the claims management industry. Dipti, welcome to the show. Really glad to be speaking to you. How are you today?
Thank you, David. Really happy to be talking to you too. I'm doing all right. It's been a very weird Berlin day today. We had rains, we had sun, and we might have a rainbow somewhere. So, a Berlin day.
Cool. Well, what we tend to do, Dipti, first of all, is because obviously everyone doesn't know your background, is to just share your story. Really, I think everyone will be really interested to see how you progressed your career from starting out as in IT and progressing into a VP of engineering.
Yeah, it has been quite a journey, I have to be honest. I mean, it hasn't been a traditional journey either. So I can start from the start. And that was way back in India, just scoring good grades in science and math. And when that's the case in India, you either choose the profession of being a doctor or you become an engineer. And I was not good enough for a doctor, but I was good enough for an engineer, and that's where I landed. But engineering has also been a part of how I was growing up, how I saw things around me. So my dad had been an engineer. My brother is a doctor, but he introduced me to computers and to really just chat circles very early on. And that was my first insight into, knowing, okay, that what is this beyond a machine, and how you actually connect with a very broad set of people and audience, whether of your likes or not. And it's just a plethora of information out there. So I think I grew up with it and I paid attention to it because I was an engineer. And I did my engineering back in India in the field of computer science with a lot of focus on different languages and, the whole growth of computer science into the different fields. So this was exciting. And I took up a role working for a big conglomerate organization back in India at that time. And I worked as a developer for a couple of years. Now, two things happened. One thing was I wasn't a great developer and I had the courage to accept it. And the second was I was completely drawn to the people aspect more and more. So even while I was working as an engineer within the organization, I saw myself going back and having more conversations and working on projects that were coming more from the human resources department. So for me, this was my first insight. And I said, hey, I need to explore this a little more. I want to not turn up into a grumpy programmer who's also bad at her job. So that's when I started discovering, and I went on to do a master's in business administration from the US. And the fields I chose was related to computer science in some ways, but not completely, because I went for strategy and organizational behavior.
Right.
So it happens that, once you are an engineer, you never stop being one.
Yep.
So everyone I started working with from there on, and as much as I was doing organizational behavior and development, I was always given a project that was computer science.
Yeah.
Integration of SAP systems, integration of, let's make performance management out of paper and pen. Dipti, how about you develop a system for making this happen? And it started from there, and I moved to Berlin. I wanted to focus on organizational behavior and development and strategy as fields, but it's a whole new space for me to come to Berlin, right? And here at that time, there was a whole big discussion and hype about Agile. So I caught myself in the Agile field, used my very heavy project management skills along with Agile to, learn and have more influence on product development. And slowly this role, took the shape of an engineering manager. From engineering manager, it took the role of VP of engineering. So I have always been really close to technology, but not necessarily developing it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you've always had that mindset because you've come from that background initially of computer science and software engineering, that you've always had that kind of outlook as looking at it as a software engineer as well as potentially from the strategic side as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I am still thinking in Venn diagrams. I'm still thinking in if then else statements. I am still thinking in, very basic, but very decision-making algorithms in my head.
Yeah.
So I think that skill never leaves you.
Yeah.
And if you can actually recognize that you have that skill, and if you can honestly care about development of individuals and people, the management role comes in quite naturally.
Yeah, I was just about to say that because you said there that you've always kind of wanted to maybe go down the people route and you enjoy working with people and the management style, but it was inevitable, I guess, because of that background that it was going to lead into that more kind of technical leadership role in the future and maybe not stay within the people element of project management, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if I look at the individuals I work with even right now, we have a lot of people or individual contributors, like, we call, and they're always stuck in a spot. And they're like, where do we go from here? We don't really like managing people, we don't really like doing these performance reviews. We don't really like talking to people. And honestly, that's not true. Every successful engineer that you have out there who's having fun at what they're doing is actually great at communication. They are great at, putting their point across and getting the clarification. It's no different from any of the other management skills you need. It's just that this whole big, black blanket on top of management that it seems like this is a beast I don't want to handle, where people are not realizing how much of it they do with themselves every day. Yeah.
So how have you just kind of moving into the last few months, because you've been at Omnius now for around 9 months, have you? You've not been there for a huge amount of time, but you've come at a point where the global pandemic has hit and you're trying to get used to the way that they work, and I imagine that there's been quite a lot of change. How's things been like at Omnius over the last few months?
Well, David, quite honestly, I've been there for a little less than 4 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I onboarded remotely.
God, right.
I onboarded remotely for my role. And it was a tough decision to make because, as a very people-oriented person and as someone who is constantly in the need to talk and, just constantly have a dialogue for understanding, I wasn't sure if this was the best move. But I'm very, very happy I made it.
Yeah.
So the last few months for me at Omnius, I discovered a few things, right? I discovered that when it comes to the role of management, it is not that you are sitting in your little office and typing performance reviews day in and day out.
Yeah.
And you need to constantly talk to people. And this had been a great start for me because I got to talk to people on an individual level in their comfort zones, in their homes. It's the kind of connection you only dream to have. So, you see people's backgrounds. You would really connect with a human being and not just work.
Yeah.
And that makes a hell of a difference because when it comes to any of the professional matters, when it comes to making new suggestions as a new team member, you're always in two minds. But now because you've understood what the person behind the screen is, you can make these connections easier. You can make these connections real. So in an office environment, this is a struggle. So as an example, we have been able to in the last 3 months, think about how do we function better as an organization. There have been very close reflection on people and processes versus technology, because the technology was running.
Yeah.
Right? The requirements are all there, but what gets dysfunctional is how you interact. And for me, this has been, absolutely mind-blowing. It was not the space I imagined I would be at. I thought I'd be completely disconnected. People wouldn't know who I am and why I'm here. But it gave a good purpose, a better goal setting, you can say.
I suppose you've been completely thrown in at the deep end, haven't you? Because you have to go out and speak to people, haven't you? You know, you've been onboarded remotely. You're leading that division and that team, so you have to obviously reach out to them remotely and get to know them on that type of basis. Is that something that you've done previously in your previous role? Had you managed teams remotely at all, or no?
I mean, manage teams remotely partially, but I've never worked in an only remote environment. It's something I would never associate with myself. I would always imagine that that's going to be, I'm going to feel out of touch with people. I'm going to be, I had discomfort working remotely before in my jobs because it was fearful. I was like, I'm not going to be in that insight group or in that talk, and I'm not going to hear people just pass by and walk. I would miss that connection.
Yeah.
But now everyone is remote. There is a very conscious effort that people make in inclusion.
Yeah.
So I think it's worked out beautifully. So the last few months in Omnius have been way smoother and way more accepting than I had it in my head.
Cool. Is that something then, as a remote way of working? Do you enjoy it, and can you see that being a way in which you'd like to work, obviously, in the future with your teams?
Yes, I mean, it's having these 3 to 4 months of time, I think, for everyone has given them this chance to introspect. They've got a chance to, each of us actually has got this chance to realize where our core and our base is. Mm-hmm. And I come from a family right now. I have a little girl at home, and I saw her so much more than I have in her last 5 years. Yeah. So I discovered new things about her. I'm not willing to let it go. And I know a lot of people have, rekindled their hobbies. People are, really going out and doing something for themselves. And we've broken that chain of monotony that work had earlier begun. So in that case, I think I can definitely see that the remote setup needs to be adapted. Yeah. We need to get more tools and more transparency in place. Mm-hmm. So alignments don't take all day long. This is another trend that at least I observe, where I start getting on calls from 8 in the morning and I'm not done till 8 in the evening, because I really have to talk and connect and align with everyone. Yeah. And this can change. So I think there is a great opportunity for companies, including us at Omnius, to discover some new ways to work together, to, discover how we stay aligned, but we don't have to make the biggest compromises of our lives anymore. Yeah. And I'm very excited for that future of work.
I was saying to you before, wasn't I, about the fact that even with myself, it usually takes me about 45 minutes to get to work. It takes me 45 minutes again to get home. So there's an hour and a half of my day that I've got with my daughters that I would never have had previously. And if we go back to just the way that things were, well, I'm losing over 6 hours of my week that I'm spending with my daughters, finding out about their day and about what they've done at school, etc. You can't buy that, So, and I think that there's millions of other people where it's just a light bulb's just gone off in their head, and they realise there is a different way, and we can be still as productive working from home as long as the communication's right and people are happy and there's transparency and ultimately trust as well to be able to do what you need to do. Everyone can have that flexibility.
Absolutely. I mean, I was reading up on some reports a few days back, and this was a great survey that was done, where they were talking about how the individual contribution from development teams has really shot up.
Right.
People are working and they feel like they are delivering at a much faster and a much effective and a much higher quality and pace.
Mhm.
However, what also happened was the other side of it. The number of releases being made had gone down,
Right.
because people are missing the coordination. And I think this is it's a great gap to find.
Yeah.
And once you find the gap, then it's a matter of trying to find the best solution around it.
Solution to it. Yeah.
I think this is true. I think this is true in most of the organizations that I've spoken to, that, people are much happier, especially developers and programmers who want to have their focus time and the non-meeting times. They find the space in their day. And now it is like an additional challenge on the management team to find the right way to make this absolutely successful, because, hey, everyone's doing their job. It's a process.
Yeah. Exactly. So, like you say, you've been thrown in at the deep end, literally at the worst time, but you seem to have adapted and taken on that challenge incredibly well. Apart from that, what's been the biggest challenge for you at Omnius since you've been there over the last kind of 3 or 4 months?
I think with Omnius, it's you've got to remember, Omnius is fairly a new company in a very ancient market.
Yeah.
We are dealing with AI products for insurances. Insurances don't change their applications or their software for centuries if they could. But they have data which is honestly that old. And in this case, what do? You kind of try to find the right balance for how far can technology really take you.
Yeah.
And this is a challenge that Omnius faces every day, of course. From that side, I think it's also, it also goes back into saying the technology side of it has to be very vigilant. But when it comes to other challenges at Omnius, it's fairly a young company. It's in its current shape and form, it is around 3 years old. So it's not a startup, it's not 6 months old, but it's not 7 or 8 years old either. So I find myself right in the middle of scale up. And there are lots of parts of Omnius which work as a startup. There is that, there's that feeling of this is mine and I need to make it work, which is absolutely essential, which you miss in most of the corporates, for example. But at the same time, you have to let go of some of the, not so good habits that were formed. You have to accept that there are going to be more tools which are going to support you for transparency. And, there will be more questions asked for this, and there'll be more alignment which is needed. So I think it's very, very surprising to see how this growth happens.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I find myself, at least I am conscious that I have to be sensitive in bringing a change.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
So, where are you up to now in terms of Omnius as a business? You've kind of gone through that period where you settled in over the last few months, and everything seems to be falling in place, working from home, and everyone seems to be following that type of way of working, and it seems to be working well now. Where do you kind of see the business going over the next couple of months in terms of your role, and what you hope for in the future?
Okay. So from where I see Omnius grow and thrive, we're fairly a new business, of course. So that also means we have a lot of challenging product features that we can still bring to the market.
Yeah.
And this market expertise is what we are chasing after right now. We want to know that we build a product to its completion, which can be adapted by very traditional businesses. And insurance is such a niche. It's such a niche with every country, right? the same insurance policy can look or can be executed differently even between Germany and Austria.
Yeah.
So when you're helping with AI platforms and automation, there are many more complicated factors that fall in place. There are the factors of bureaucracy, there are the factors of legality, there are the factors of just language even.
Mm-hmm.
So the AI tool has to be robust enough to scale.
Yeah.
And again, it has to be also very robust in terms of scaling for the technology part of it. Insurance businesses are not small. We're not looking at a traffic of 2,000 or a 4,000 per day. You're looking at reading documents which can end up into millions.
Yeah.
So having systems both on the AI platform and on our backend platform and on the front end platform, which kind of talk to each other at a higher scale, is of precedence.
Cool.
And once you integrate, so one of the biggest things that AI platforms like ours do is they integrate themselves into the existing infrastructure of the more traditional insurance companies.
Yeah.
So you also have to make sure that it's modern enough, and you're using the latest technologies, but you're not using unproven technologies.
Yes. Yeah. I understand.
So yeah, so there is, I think, the more I talk about it, actually, I realize how many different decision points are we going through in a day. I'm pretty certain I'll be talking to someone about this again tomorrow at work.
See, I'm just giving you thoughts and ideas for what you need to be sorting for the next few. That's exciting. It sounds really cool. To be fair, what you're developing over there, and you seem to have a really good model and kind of structure in place to create something really cool. So yeah, it's really good. Just finally, if there was a piece of advice that you would give to a development professional or anyone in the tech industry that's looking to progress into a management role in the future, what would that be?
I would actually put it in two ways. I would say reflect a lot on what you enjoy as an individual. Don't make a compromise on that, but also don't overthink, because this is a space I find my challenge comes in when I'm talking to a lot of the engineers on my team as well. That, they've made the word of management as a beast out there.
Yeah.
And it honestly is not. And it doesn't need a completely different set of skills either. It just requires you to be more conscious. And, if you're working on that side of improvements and making everyone's life a little bit easier, then there are many ways to do it. I chose the path of doing it along with people and processes. One of the engineers could say, I want to choose the path of making this through the architecture. And another could very well say, hey, no, I want to be the best individual contributor that there can be. And they're all perfectly fair choices. But you have to reflect enough to know which way do you want to go. Otherwise, at a scale of, let's say, 10 to 12 years down the line, when you're doing the same job, the frustration set in so quickly. Yeah. Because you feel that you're stuck. You're not really stuck. You just have to choose a path. And there has to be someone that you look up to who can show you these different paths. So for me, I think a big part of how I develop is because I have mentors outside of work. I've always had them. And I've always had someone talking to me in a casual fashion on what I'm going to be doing next. Yep. So I think you have to find that spot for yourself where you find someone you can talk to, whether it is your manager or someone outside of work, and then take conscious reflections into actions. Yeah, so that would be my sage advice.
Brilliant. I think that's great advice. Absolutely brilliant advice. So thank you for that. All right, brilliant. Well, that's everything. We'll wrap things up now, Dipti. So thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate your time and taking the effort to speak with me. I hope everyone's enjoyed it. If you have enjoyed it, could you please share, like, and pass on to your friends and colleagues if you feel that it would be beneficial to them. But otherwise, I will speak to you soon, and we'll have the next episode over the next week or so. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, David. This was really, really insightful.